Hello and welcome to another episode of Numerical Productions and, well, building the Ocelot Kingdom. This has been a project that I've been doing for absolutely ages now, and it's probably not even 1% complete. Now, I got a lot done last time. I built this beautiful tree, this was off camera, but if you watch the Merry Minecrafty Murders animated series, episode 2 is coming out one day, I promise. But this also pops up in there if you want to see what that looks like in an animation. But there's a really big problem with this build. Now, if you look inside the debug screen, I am currently facing west when I'm looking here. But there's one slight problem. This build is facing exactly the wrong way. So I've built this entire build, how'd say this, back to front. Oh no. So I'm going to need to figure out a creative way this episode to make this part of the build look like the front. Oh dear. Here we go. Okay, I think I've figured out what I want to do. So, I can't really do many changes to most of this, but what I can do is make a lake here. That way it'll seem like a beautiful entrance, and then if I make two walkways extending from here, and, well, here as well, down the sides of the lake, it'll make it look like a grand entrance, and I'll be able to fix the build without doing it all over again. So, time to get started. Yay, time for a time lapse. Okay. Okay, so this may not seem like much, but it is a good start to building a lake. Now, one really good tip when you're hollowing out large areas or you want to make changes on a huge scale, don't be afraid of using commands. Commands like the /fill command can save hours of time in a project like this, because usually I'd already spent maybe 3 hours digging this out. So to use a /fill command, all you do is you do /fill, type it into your chat screen like so, then you type the coordinates for each corner of the area you want to fill, and then it will fill a square area between those two corners. So, for example, this squiggly sign means that it's relative to your current position. So that means that it'll, instead of centering it on the world origin, so 0, 0, it'll put it on your position, which means if you do, for example, I want to fill it 10 blocks to my left, 10 blocks above my head, 10 blocks behind me, and then 10 blocks to my right, 10 blocks below me, and 10 blocks in front of me, and I want to fill that area with, let's say, moss. Ta-da! We now have a filled area full of moss. Trouble is you get stuck on the interior if you do it this way. But that shows you just how useful fill commands can be. Obviously we're not going to leave this here, so another really useful trick is you can also fill the area with air. And that gets rid of all of this nice and neatly. There we go. See, and because of this little trick, it makes hollowing out these huge areas extremely easy. Another thing which can really speed up this process is instead of typing out the command every single time you want to use it, you can press the upwards arrow key in order to repeat the last command you used. So that way, you can just keep on spamming this and deleting all the blocks you need to delete. Or placing huge cubes of moss like I sometimes do. You can also do this with TNT, it's quite fun. Another practical use for this is the fill replace part of a command. So, we don't actually want the floor of our lake to be stone. we want it to be more dirt, so we're going to be filling it with dirt. So same command as before, but then after this we're going to type replace. This means that it will replace the object we specify. So for example, let's make it dirt, replace. Let's make it replace granite. Yeah, there we go. Now we don't have any of that ugly granite messing up our build. Next, let's do it for stone. So we just type in stone instead of granite. Note that I'm using the upwards arrow key so I don't have to type this ridiculously long command all over again. And ta-da! Now we have no more stone messing up the bottom of our lake. Obviously, doing it like this only fills up one type of material at a time, and I'll probably have to go through with just a dirt block to deal with all the ores and diorite and things, but it can get you, again, a few hours of extra time. And if you're operating on limited time, like I often am, then it can really make the difference between a completed build and just a pile of blocks in the middle of nowhere. So currently we've got this big, ugly, cubic looking hole in the ground, and this will never do. Like, look at this place. We've got all these lovely curves, all this architecture, and then we've got this cubic hole in the ground. So we're now going to need to do a bit of smoothing out to get it fitting properly with the rest of the build. I'll start another time lapse. Okay, so now that we have this place looking really a lot better than it was, like before this is all full of ugly blocks, and now look at it. It's all nice and smooth apart from these two patches of order I forgot to remove during the time lapse. Oops. Yeah, apart from that though, it's looking a lot prettier. Can't resist it. I'm removing all the straight lines here so that it looks a bit more natural. There we go. All better. Nope, there's still another line. Okay. Anyway, back to what I was doing. Okay, so now that we've dug out our big hole and made it look just about presentable, it's now time for one of the more enjoyable parts of the process, which is adding water. So this is really not as scary as it looks, flooding this huge area, because once again we can use our commands to help us out a bit. So first of all, let's fly out, just get to the correct level, so this is the level we want water to be reaching, and then we'll do fly out to the middle of the lake so that if it goes wrong nothing too horrible happens, and then we do /fill, and then we just do the squiggly arrow 10. Now we don't want it to go 10 blocks above our head, otherwise we'll just end up flooding half the area, so instead we're going to just leave it like this, then 10, and then we want to do it -10. We want to go 10 blocks below our feet, and then another -10. There we go. Okay, all sorted. Then we need to decide what we want to finish it with. Well, it's a lake, so water. Finally, we want to decide what we want to replace. Because we've just done all this terraining and, well, destroying it all and replacing it with water wouldn't be very nice. So we're going to replace air. Now this is actually really useful because there are a lot of situations where you need to do this. And now look at this. We've got a little tool which we can now repetitively use to flood our lake. Well, okay, it's not exactly 100% perfect. I have to go around there with a sponge later. Don't know why it's doing that. There you go. If you're left with weird little currents and things, you can always do /fill water, replace water. That also makes it move forwards by one block, which is quite satisfying actually, just seeing it slowly move forwards. Because what that does is it replaces the flowing water with full water blocks, and that makes it all start flooding, which is just the way we want it. Look at that. all sorted. Then to finish the effect, we just need to grab a sponge, which I think is still in the Nature tab. Yeah, here we go. And we're just going to want to remove a bit of the water here. If you're doing this on a very large scale, I'd recommend using /fill commands, because they are way better for doing this type of thing. But for a small area like that, we can afford to use sponges. And now we can just deal with all of the remaining currents. And now look at that. We have a lake, which actually looks quite nice. Like, this could definitely fit into this build. Now I've just realised that this drop-off doesn't actually look particularly attractive. So hold on a second while I go in a time-lapse and fix that. Right, so now that we've finished all of that, this lake looks a lot better. I mean, there's still a few slight problems caused by all the big commands we did, because although commands are really, really powerful tools, they're not exactly very good at distinguishing between what you want to keep and what you want to get rid of. Which means you'll often get bits like this where you have bits of leaves get left floating. You'll occasionally have grass blocks put in positions like this that can be quite awkward. But once you've gone through and just checked for all these little errors caused by the command blocks, it's really useful actually. So, now that we've done all that, it's time to get the main features of the build done. So I think I want one entrance popping up somewhere over here. Just here, yeah. There we go. Let's open up the side of the tree here a bit. I reckon, yeah, just a bit here. And there we go, that's one entrance done. Oh no, we can make it a bit bigger. Yeah, a bit bigger. 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 Yeah. Like that, I think. That way it looks a bit more obvious from the outside. We're just going to replicate this on the other side. Yep, so we want a nice big entrance. Big as we can get it. Right. So now this is all sorted, we're going to have to figure out, because currently, to get to this entrance, you've got to climb up a cliff. And I don't know about you, but if I was going to visit a royal palace, I wouldn't want to have to climb up a cliff every time I visited. So we're going to have to think of a better solution than just climbing up a cliff for this one. And what I reckon we're going to do is we're going to have two nice big suspended walkways that go down here and then join up at the end. If that makes sense, which it probably doesn't. You'll see what I mean in a second. But if you've ever heard of, I think there's some gardens in Singapore that gave me the inspiration for this. But if you've ever seen the photos, they've got these big sort of mushroom looking things, which are always lit up at night. And they've got these beautiful walkways in between them. And I kind of want to replicate that here because it's such a cool idea. So, for the walkway, I think we're going to start by getting perhaps some oak wood. Yep. Maybe oak wood slabs for the middle. Yeah, I reckon that should be a good start, and we can lay out the foundation with this and see what we think. And because I haven't used oak wood in any other parts of the build, it means I can use my commands to change the wood type if I want to. So, we just do a lot of this. And this is really useful because you can just get a really nice precise curve, just the shape you want it. And it can go a really long way if you like, and it will still keep exactly the shape you want. Oh, I've hit a tree. Yeah. The only problem when you're not looking when you're going is that, well, you're not looking where you're going. Yeah, I'll have to remove that tree later. Maybe I'll do it in a time lapse. Yeah, something like this. Except this bit looks a bit ugly, so we can change the curve's shape slightly here. Yep, so now this looks a bit more presentable. and I'll fill in the other bits for wireframe, and then we'll see what we think. Great, so now that we've got all the wireframes in place, we can see sort of where this path would go. So if you imagine that these are filled in, perhaps with oak slabs between them, you can really get an idea of what this build's going to end up looking like. And I reckon I'm rather liking this. So, another time lapse I think while I do all of the filling in with oak slabs. Now that we've done all of this filling in, we can now start to get a real idea of what this will look like. So yeah, I think I'm quite happy with the shape, but you'll have probably noticed this. There's not that many details currently going on. Like, it's just a bit bland, it's flat, it doesn't really have anything going for it currently, so we're going to have to change that somehow. Now, the entire theme of the Ocelot Kingdom build is, what if you could use nature to build? So for example, this tree, the idea is it kind of just grew into this shape and just a couple of little bits were added onto it manually. And all of this is kind of eventually going to be built along that same concept. So we need to find a way to make this fit with that theme. Now, I think I have an idea. We're going to need some jungle wood and also some slabs, stairs and fences. Oh, and also some leaves. I reckon jungle leaves. So, since this entire build's theme is what if you could use nature to build, how about we take that to the extreme by, or rather just a simple bit of it, by using trees as the supports for this. So perhaps we're going to have sort of a bit like, if you've ever seen a willow tunnel, you'll know what I'm thinking of. But willow tunnels, I don't know if they're anywhere other than Britain, but they are a method of building these nice little tunnels in gardens made by training willow plants to grow into hoop shapes, and then you get a lot of willow plants packed together and it makes this beautiful leafy tunnel. So I'm thinking we do that on a larger scale with huge jungle trees. So we're perhaps going to have it like this, yeah. And then we're going to alternate between jungle trees. So we're going to have, maybe actually let's do this properly. Let's have it alternate between jungle and spruce. Yeah, that way. Well, actually, no, wait. We're going to have three things. That way, it kind of regularly changes instead of having all of the same colour on one side. So perhaps we're going to switch between jungle, spruce, and strip spruce. Yeah, that seems like a good colour palette. So we're going to have one spruce tree here, maybe. Yeah, like that. Yep. Perhaps a bit higher up so that we can see. Well, thing is that we want it feel like quite spacious and open, so we want to be able to sprint and jump through here, which means that these have to be fairly high above the path. And then finally, yeah, let's add a stripped spruce tree. Honestly, I never thought I'd be saying that, because stripped spruce is not really it's not really a log you ever expect to use when you're building trees. Like, you expect to use things with bark on them, but it actually is quite a nice colour and looks quite similar to a lot of other trees' barks, which means that in contexts like this one, it's pretty good for when you just want another tree type other than the vanilla varieties. Yeah, perhaps let's make it a bit thicker. We want this tree to look like it can stand up. And yeah, so I'm going to add the logs for all of the other trees, and then I'll be back. This time I won't do a time lapse, because this video is getting to the point at which it's probably 90% time lapse by the time I've finished editing. So off I go. I am back, and all of that is now finished. Every one of the logs is now in position, and again, like, it looks cool, but it still looks unfinished. And that is precisely what it is, because we want all of these to be luscious trees with beautiful foliage on them. So, we might start, for example, by adding a few details to these trees. So just the odd slab, the odd fence, just the odd little thing to make it look a bit more complete. Because currently it's not looking very good. Then perhaps let's get another colour of leaves. I'm thinking we've got like 2 colours of leaves, like maybe on this tree. Like we've got mangrove leaves, which are kind of like little parasitic plants growing on the tree, and then we've got jungle leaves, which are the tree itself. Yeah, I reckon that'll work. And since the mangrove plants are the parasitic plants, we're going to have to come up with 2 other leaf colours. So maybe azalea and let's not go too complicated. Let's go oak for the other ones. So we're going to start by adding a couple of bits of mangrove, just dotted around. Yeah, like that. That's already looking a million times better. Then a few slabs and things just to give it a few branches. And now we just add a few leaves. It's really that simple. So when you're adding leaves, you can afford to just click a bit randomly to kind of create this random mess, like so. And then after you've finished adding your random mess, you can then prune it a bit to get the shape you really want out of it. So for example, I want this branch to be properly covered in leaves, but random clicking didn't quite get that, so I'm going to add a bit here. Yep. And then perhaps another bit of leaves here, maybe a couple of bits of leaves on the underside. And yeah, I reckon that this tree is looking pretty much complete. I mean, we can probably, if we want to, add a few more details. Like, for example, if we wanted to, we could maybe... Yeah, why not? Let's add a couple extra details. So, I reckon we're going to add acacia leaves as slightly thinner leaves here. Just kind of give it a bit more texture, a bit more depth. So, a bit of acacia here and there. And that just makes it look a bit more rugged and a bit less, a bit less artificial. So, I'm now going to go off camera again because I think I've used up all of my available time-lapse time for this video. Otherwise, people will start complaining. And I think I'll get all of the trees fitted out with leaves. See you then. Okay, so now that this is all built, we can finally get a real idea of what the build's actually going to look like in the end. And I mean, it's pretty, but there's still a couple of things missing because this walkway still feels a bit too open, and I want it to feel a bit more enclosed. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to make special vines, handrails I suppose. This build is now almost finished because I think it's turned out just the way I wanted it to. Because look at this. It feels just so much more alive now with this. Well, these vines, they just make it feel... I don't know. I like it. It's jungly. So we've just got a last bit of detailing to do because this whole area now needs to be brought together and I need to make everything feel just as detailed as the things inside the tree and on the other side. So, without further delays, with that, the build is finally finished. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Building the Ocelot Kingdom, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please like and subscribe. It helps keep me in the whole YouTube thing. And yes, I'll see you next time. In the time-lapse I added this nice little boulder field, but if you want a tutorial for that, you'd be better off watching a YouTuber who's actually good at building, like Good Times with Scar, or Mumbo Jumbo, or any of those lot, because they are way better at doing boulders than I am. So if you want a good tutorial for that, go watch them. Bye!